Hello everyone and welcome back to the finals of the Aimchess Rapid Division 1 winners section. It is Magnus Carlsen versus Nodirbek Abdusattorov. We've seen what happened in the first game. This is the second game. Magnus won that beautiful endgame with the black pieces, and now Nodirbek needs to win a game to bounce back and to try and equalize the match, and hopefully for him maybe even win it. So let's see what happened here. Magnus has the white pieces and he opens with pawn to e4. And for those of you who have seen my previous video, I've mentioned that we've finally finished our app for learning chess after, well, some 2 years. So hope you guys are enjoying it. Like I said in the previous video, do check it out. First link in the description below. We are already receiving quite a lot of suggestions from you guys. So, keep at it. We are trying to make it as great as possible. We really appreciate every insight you might give us on the app. Like we will try to improve everything. So do try it out. Let us know what you think. And well, hopefully you enjoy it. That being said, let's check out the game. Pawn to e4, pawn to c5 by Nodirbek, going for the Sicilian defense. Knight to f3, pawn to e6, and now pawn to d4. Open Sicilian. I mentioned in a couple of my previous videos that people don't really play the open Sicilian that much nowadays. Everyone tries some c3 Alapin variation, or even, just bishop to b5, Danish Medino Rosolimo. But here Magnus says, I want to fight, let's play the open Sicilian. Pawn to d4, captures, and now knight to f6. We have bishop to d3, d6, and now usually you will see knight to c3 or just castles here, but Magnus plays pawn to c4. It's a really weird move, only been played a handful of times by not very strong players, so this is it's a very weird move to play. It's sort of like going for the Marozzi bind structure, but with a bishop on d3. Just looks kind of weird, but okay. Magnus, of course, wants to confuse Nodirbek as much as possible and get just a playable position as soon as possible. Clear all theory from the game, which I'm sure you guys are enjoying the most as well. So bishop to e7, knight to c3. We have a6, and now there is a game where castles was played. Magnus just plays bishop to e3. And it is now, as of move 8, that we have a completely new game. And, of course, bishops on e3 and d3, this is a sign of a great attacker. You know that Paul Morphy always put his bishops on d3 and d3. This will be an attacking game. So we have castles by both players, and now pawn to b6. Nodirbek prepares to fianchetto the dark light square bishop, and, well, just put pressure on that e4 pawn. The knight will also come to d7, then to c5, then put more pressure on e4, and Magnus will have to figure out a way how to keep the center closed so he can just attack that king on the king side, as the bishops are very nicely placed here. So here, pawn to f4 by Magnus. We have queen to c7. We have rook to c1, nicely aligning the rook with the queen on the c file, and knight b to d7. And here Magnus just plays pawn to g4. And this is, whenever I face the Sicilian, I have similar structures. You know, I want to play g4. I never know if it's a good idea, if it's just, if it will create a devastating attack, or will I just weaken my king too much. I always play it. Sometimes I win, sometimes I don't, but Magnus says, all right, well, let's just play it against Nodirbek, and it is in fact the strongest move recommended by the engine. So okay, you could go with bishop b7, you could go with knight to c5, however you want to play it, as both moves will be played. So knight to c5 first. We have bishop to b1. You also don't want to give up your light square bishop. It's just a monster piece, and you want it there for the rest of the game, because probably you will play something like queen e1 to h4 to put pressure on h7, then the rook to f3 to h3 to put more pressure on h7. These are just standard plans that white will use to try and destroy the Sicilian defense. And of course, you know that the knights are coming to d5 to f5, all the usual sacrifices that are possible in positions like these. So bishop to b7, we have queen to f3. For the moment, you have to use your queen to defend the pawn, but it's all very standard. And now pawn to g6. This is a very interesting move, because you know that Magnus is planning pawn to b4. Of course, you know that. And do you play a5 here? Do you have time for a5? Is b4 a bigger threat of, let's say, pawn to f5 or pawn to g5, just, getting all your pieces into the attack? Do you need to waste a move in order to kind of limit the power of this bishop on b1. Nodirbek decides, yes, you do. b4 is not as big of a threat, and he goes for pawn to g6, which again is the top move recommended by the engine. So brilliant play by both players so far. Magnus, of course, continues with b4. I would argue against the engine, but that's just silly. I mean, I would, of course, play pawn to a5, but okay. Knight c to d7 and pawn to g5 now. Challenging the knight here, we have knight to h5 and now knight to d5. Now it looks a bit scary, and of course if you're playing with the blank pieces, you will be like, oh no, I'm just getting destroyed here. But if you're a Sicilian player, you should not be scared off by this knight to d5 sacrifice. It's pretty standard, everyone does it, and you should just, you know, get used to it. So knight to d5, what do? Do you capture the knight? Well, we could try. The short answer is you can capture it. The long answer is you can capture it, but maybe you don't want to, but because then comes knight to f5. And what now? Of course, if you capture the second knight, then you're just going to capture this. First, we gain some activity here. We kick away the black queen, and then we capture on h5. And then this will be a problem. This will be a problem. Maybe bishop coming to d4 will be a problem. Too many problems for that one piece. You're just not getting anything for it. But after you capture it, a knight to f5, you don't have to capture this knight as well. You could just play queen to d8, and the game continues with something like e captures on d5. Again, you never really want to capture this. You could just start remaneuvering. Let's say knight to h6 check, king goes here, queen to h3, and it's a game. It's the engine literally gives 0-0 here. Of course, when you're playing a position like this, you do not feel it's a 0-0. So you know, Nodirbek decides against it. He just plays queen to d8. He wants to defend his bishop on e7. And Magnus says, I will gradually, you know, eliminate your bishop pair. So captures, and queen to h3 now. Putting significant pressure on this e6 pawn. You know that f5 is coming, so Nodirbek just defends it. Probably the rook would come to c8 if not for this pressure, but he feels that there's too much pressure. So he just helps out with the defense. We have rook c to e1, and now we have queen back to d8. We have knight to e2. Now the knight is coming to g3, and you want to get rid of, well, one of the defenders of the black king. So pawn to e5, but Magnus just plays pawn to f5. We have pawn to f6, and usually we say that when you play pawn to f6 with black, it's either losing or is the strongest move. In this case, it is the strongest move, just putting pressure on that g5 pawn. The queen, of course, helping out, but Magnus just strengthens it. So queen to h4, we have rook to f7 now, preparing to double up on the f file before opening up the position, and rook to d1. We have queen to c7, and now bishop to d3, guarding the pawn here. The d6 pawn, yes, it's a very weak backwards pawn, but Magnus, for the moment, is not very interested in that pawn. He wants to attack the black king. We have rook e to f8, and now g captures on f6. We have knight d captures, and now bishop to h6. And the problem is just not easy to get rid of that this threat. You could, of course, play something like knight to g7, then comes knight to g3, and black's position is just looking incredibly weird. On the other hand, if you try to move the rook, it's not as great. Just let's say captures, and knight to g3. Now you're really passive here. You can never really trade here because then you weaken this knight. Bishop to e2 is coming. You're gonna it's not losing by force, just in a rapid game with little time on the clock, it's incredibly difficult to spot moves. So instead, pawn to g5, Nodirbek says, all right, let's play active chess, let's give up one pawn, let's open up the g file, and then maybe I can also use it to attack the white king. So okay, Magnus not afraid, queen captures on g5 check, king h8, and now bishop captures on f8. This also comes with an exchange sacrifice, but Nodirbek, well, would rather do that than to play a passive position. So knight to g3, so you don't lose a queen with rook to g8, and queen to h6. We have queen to f7, and now bishop to e2, getting ready to trade some pieces here, but now knight to f4. And this is a remarkable knight here, and Magnus, of course, would rather see it gone from the board than enjoy being up the exchange. So he gives back the exchange, captures on f4, pawn captures, queen captures, and now knight captures on e4, made possible as the knight on g3 cannot move. So king to f1, and now queen to g7. And now, How do you proceed here? Well, there are many possibilities, but Nodirbek is very low on time, and Magnus just pushes f6. Point is that you can't trade queens. If you trade queens, then just captures, and rook captures. You're up a pawn, you're going to win another one, and you're going to win the game. So, of course, Nodirbek has to capture back with the knight, and now Magnus goes king to e1. Not probably deciding that the king will be safest in the middle of the board, but maybe even thinking about hiding the king all the way to the queen side. So here we have queen to e7, and now queen captures on d6. Magnus just grabs a pawn. Nodirbek again avoids the queen trade, as he will be worse in an endgame, and Magnus grabs another pawn. And now he says, I'm up 2 pawns. If you can't checkmate me, I just win the game. So Nodirbek has to try rook to e8, and Magnus goes rook to d8. He's up 2 pawns, he wants to trade. Of course, that's the way to do it. Rook captures, queen captures, and now knight to g8. Stopping check, but now comes knight to f5, and the black queen now must remain on this diagonal, otherwise something like queen to d4 check just ends the game on the spot. So queen to c3 check, king to f2, and he was in this position on move 43 that Nodirbek Abdusattorov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You're down 2 pawns. If you collect one pawn, then just queen d4 check, and you're out of moves. You are getting checkmated, so that's pretty much it. And if you don't do this, well, like I said, you're down 2 pawns. Magnus will force a queen trade with something like queen d4, and then of course just easily win the endgame, being up 2 pawns. So yeah, very nicely done by Magnus. He wins the first game, beautiful endgame. He wins the second game, just completely outplaying Nodirbek, and the third game ended in a draw, which means that Magnus is the winner of the Aimchess Rapid Division 1 winner section, and he qualifies for the grand final. And of course, we will also be covering that once it comes to that. But yeah, very nicely done. If you have some other games that were really good and you guys would enjoy dissecting them, do use hashtag suggestion and I will go over them. But this is pretty much it from the tournament. Magnus wins it all. He wins it all, whatever he plays. So, you know, we have to wait for another person to challenge him. Here he didn't find much competition. So I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Once again, do try out our app. First link in the description below. We really enjoy your input. We really want to make it as great as possible. Do try it, and if you want to learn a little bit more about it, I gave a pretty long introduction in the previous video, so do check it out. And yeah, I would like to thank James Eugene Cashman, Brad Roth, Michael Marshall, BulletChessThriller.com, and John Malpass for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.